Good morning, everyone. Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. I am happy to be here with all of you today. So today we're talking about transitions. And, recently I had a question from, one of the webinars that we were doing is what is transitions? Let's talk about that. And so we're going to go deep and wide with that because when it comes to special needs planning, the word transition can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people and a lot of different aspects of planning for the future of your loved one. So again, Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. I come to you wearing multiple hats. I'm wearing the hat of a parent. I have 4 kids and 2 that have special needs. I have one that is in the midst of transitioning and into adulthood, and I have one that has already transitioned. So, and what I would say is navigating these things is bumpy, but that's a good word, bumpy at best. It's not easy. You don't really know everything that you need to know, and there's not really one great source where you can get all of your information. And the only thing that a lot of parents know is there's a lot to know, and I don't know what I don't know, right? So we put out a lot of webinars on a regular basis, really designed to empower you and give you the tools and resources that you need to be successful in this journey and to make things a little bit easier as you're going through this. So that word, we are talking about transitions. This is a word that we hear in the public school setting when the school is talking about transitioning from from the classes to maybe the 18+ program, or transitioning from public school to an outside transition program. Transition is a word that we hear pretty regularly when we're talking to our physicians that are talking to us about when and how they're going to boot our children out of their practices. And we have to find new care for our kids and their complex care needs. So that is another transition. Sometimes it happens at 18, sometimes it happens to 21. And there are some clinics, specialty clinics, that will see your child indefinitely, more often, sometimes in the example of cancer clinics or some rare disorder or something along those lines where there's not a lot of clinics out there. But today, so we're going to talk about a lot of things, but we're not going to be talking about medical transitions, and we're going to talk about some school transitions, but we're going to talk about transitions to the point of what do you need to do and how do things change from the age of 17 to age 18. So we're glad you're here. Today's meeting is being recorded. We do welcome your questions, and if you will put your questions in the chat box today, we're going to get to as many questions as we can, and we're going to kind of do that as we're going through the presentation. So don't hold your questions to the end. Definitely put them in the chat box. So getting started on this planning process, this transition planning process, I think it's first and foremost important as parents for us to really set realistic expectations. And really what I'm talking about here is, it's really not a race. It's not a race. We don't have to compare. In this world that we're living in, we're always comparing ourselves, our kids, to other kids, their age. What are the other kids doing? Where are they going after high school and things like that? And I think it's important for us to just kind of check where we are as a family, where our child is from an educational perspective, from a maturity perspective, from a health perspective. I mean, of course, we've been living in a pandemic for, seems like, endless amounts of time. And that has changed kind of the trajectory of what options are maybe available for our kids post-high school as we're thinking about these transitions. But understanding the diagnoses, the challenges and the strengths, and who more could understand that? We've been living with this all of our lives with your child. But what does the path look like? Is this a traditional path where we're going to move on to a community college or a university, or are we thinking about a non-traditional path? So maybe the university or community college is not in the cards. Maybe there are, trade schools, we could, look at certificate programs, licensing programs, other things like that. And then, of course, there's a number of transition programs, both with the public school and through private options as well. But consider all of these things. And some of the things, one thing that I like to talk about, it's kind of near and dear to my heart, is the delay of the driver's license, or the consideration as it relates to driver's license. So clearly there are some of our kids that have disabilities, and they will never, ever be able to drive, and that is okay. But there are other kids that may be able to have a driver's license in the future. Maybe they're not ready yet, but they could be in the future. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you is that in the greater Houston area, there are 2 disability driving instruction schools. One is Miller Driving Rehab. The other one is Strymat Driving Rehab. And these are kind of, number one, they do an extensive assessment of your child and their ability to drive, number one. And number 2, if they find through that assessment that your child may have the ability to drive in the future, then they have a behind the wheel training program that is designed for people with disabilities, people that have had strokes that are coming back to drive after the fact of that, people with any number of disabilities. It might be autism, it might be ADHD, it could be processing speed delays, working memory issues, etc. So there are programs out there. They're not cheap. But when it comes to the life of your child and their opportunities by having a driver's license and the safety of themselves and others, I would say that your average driving schools are not up to the challenge of the behind the wheel. There used to be one that was in Houston. They're no longer they're closed, and they did a good job with folks with disabilities as well. So when we're thinking about some of these other options, what about a reduced course load? I have parents that say, there's just no way that my child could take 12 hours at the community college or at the university. But what if they could take one class? What if you could try your hand at this over the summer? What if you could kind of try this, see how it goes, whether it's online or whether it is in person, just kind of see how it goes, and then you can build up from there. So my point is even if we're getting started in this, it's okay to dip your toe in and try your hand at things, as opposed to jumping off the deep end. So if we know our child, struggles academically, or, maybe, too many classes, are overwhelmed by that, just start slow. Think about living at home versus living on campus at first. But the bottom line is, when it comes to these realistic expectations, again, they are where they are. They're not behind. And they may come to the community college or to the university a little bit later. Maybe they spend 4 years in a transition program. We see this all the time. And then they make that transition. And this is usually something that we see in line with some of the diagnoses where maturity is not quite there yet. We got to keep in mind that our kids, with the disability, our kids in general, period, their brains aren't even fully formed until they're 26. So I talk to parents every day, and they say, I'm hopeful and optimistic that my child will be able to live independently or semi-independently. But right now, at age 17, he's not there yet. She's not there yet. And if I had to make a guess or make a bet, I would say that maybe he won't be able to. And so, and that is true. So if you have felt that before, you're not alone. A lot of parents feel the same way, but the years go by and the maturity happens that you can't even foresee because you're not living it right now. And they do have options and opportunities available to them that might not be a good fit right now. Okay. So one of the things in finding a good fit that we want to talk about and spend time about as you're thinking is having a plan and working your plan. Okay, so you're here. I'm glad you're here, and getting started early in the transition process is important. It's important to be able to align the dots and to be able to have your plan and work your plan as you had planned. Not all these programs have unlimited access or unlimited enrollment. So sometimes getting into these programs early is going to be important to the success of your plan. But what we want you to think about right now, if you've got a child that's 15, 14, 15, 16, What is the plan? Do you plan for them to stay in the public school until they're 21 or 22? Do you plan to go to the 18 plus program? Having these definitive conversations with your school, and when you're having your ARD meetings, your IEP, IEP meetings, those types of things, having these conversations early and not waiting till your child gets 18 and saying, oh, by the way, I want them to stay in until they're 21 or 22, I think is important. The other thing that we see, and this is especially harder in the pandemic that we've seen, is the extracurricular activities and kind of thinking about some of those things. What we want to avoid is that the child graduates from high school and there is no plan. They come home, they're playing video games, there's no extracurricular activities, no interaction with people, those types of things. So think about, what is the good fit right now? Is it a career path? Is it a work setting? If the schools and colleges are not a great fit, and what types of settings would be a good fit when we're thinking about a work setting or career path? Kind of on that note, we've seen lately that a lot of the kids that have disabilities, and this is a broad stroke, and I'm not saying everyone by any stretch of the imagination, but what we've seen over the last year and a half is that anxiety, depression, other mental and mood disorders seem to be on the rise in a big way. So if your child has multiple disabilities alongside, with some of the anxiety or depression that we're seeing, the work setting and the proper work setting might matter for them. So if they have anxiety, a fast-paced environment at Starbucks might kill them, right? Or maybe a fast-paced environment in retail or something, maybe food service and things like that might not be a good fit for them. So what would be? So those are some of the things that we want to be thinking about. Okay, so I actually see something in the chat box where someone said Safeway Driving in the Woodlands has a special ed instructor who did a great job. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And the interesting thing is Miller Driving Rehab and Strawmat Driving are all, I think, basically all of the special needs driving schools are in the Woodlands in that general vicinity anyway. Okay. So I want to talk about accommodations, because this was a tricky thing that as I was transitioning my daughter, and we were kind of moving along that path, when you have accommodations in the public school, we've been afforded those, we re-up them or, reevaluate them each year. But the interesting thing is when we're moving on to the community college or to the university, those accommodations, those ARDs that we have, all of those accommodations, IEP, none of that transfers to the university or the community college. So first thing first, what you want to know about the community college and the university is that all schools are created differently. And for our inconvenience, they all have a separate set of rules. So it would be nice to say that all of the colleges in Texas operate XYZ, and they don't. So each school has a disability office or Office of Disability. Sometimes they call it ODS. And so what you're going to want to do is if you are planning for your child to go to the community college or the university, you want to talk and find out what the accommodations are available through that school. What do you have to do to apply for them? What proof do you have to show that your child is eligible for them? So most of the schools are going to require updated testing within the last 3 to 5 years. I'm talking about neuropsych testing, possibly learning disability testing. Some of this testing may have been done by your public school. Maybe it can be done by your public school. Some of this testing can be done by an independent psychologist or psychiatrist. I've seen TCH do some of this testing depending on the diagnosis. Also, sometimes your local intellectual disability authority will do this testing as well. And for Harris County, that local authority used to be called MHMRA, and now it is called the Harris Center. You've probably heard of that. So if you live in Harris County, Harris Center. If you live in Fort Bend County, the local intellectual disability authority is Texana. So they may be doing some testing as well. But my point is this needs to get done. So if you haven't had testing in the last 3 to 5 years, you need to have your testing updated. You also need to schedule in advance, because sometimes these professionals that are doing the testing are really, really backed up. The other issue is if they're not really, really backed up, sometimes once they do the testing, it could take 1 to 3 months to get the results. So take that all into consideration. The other thing that I wanted to mention to you is, because of the pandemic, some of the schools have relaxed some of their requirements as it relates to accommodations. And it doesn't mean that they'll accept no testing, but I have seen some schools that would accept older testing if it was also accompanied by a letter from your physician or from your psychologist or psychiatrist, which basically says, I've seen, XYZ student for this many years. They have a permanent disability. The needs, the accommodations and the needs previously listed in the testing remain the same today. And here's my recommendations. Please accept this in lieu of updated testing, as updated testing is not necessary because they have a permanent disability that hasn't changed. So you can save yourself $3,500 to $5,000 if you can get a place to accept a letter along with your old testing. Sometimes this testing can also be done very, very often, vocational rehab through the Texas Workforce Commission. The vocational rehab program is for kids with disabilities from 14 to 22. As a part of putting an employment plan in place, they do testing. It could be the neuropsych, which is common. It also could be a vocational evaluation, which is also common, and maybe they do some learning disabilities as well. So as it relates to SAT and ACT, these have accommodations available basically on their website. So SAT is the collegeboard.org, and ACT, I think, is act.org. They have their own separate requirements for accommodations. So if you go to their website, you can just type in the search box accommodations. And it's going to take you to a page where there's going to be some forms that you can download that will need to be completed by your physician and signed off on, and then you can send those back in. Some examples of accommodations on SAT and ACT are 50% or 100% more time for kids that have working memory or processing speed delays. They could have testing in a private setting. So if we have kids that are distracted, maybe they're in a private room instead of the room with the masses. There could be a reader as another example. And sometimes the voice to text recognition if there's hearing impaired or vision impaired or things like that. So there's all kinds of accommodations that are out there. Another one, if we have kids that are really overwhelmed, you could have testing over multiple days instead of doing it all in one shot. So those are some examples. And what I would say, again, get these requirements in early because the SAT and ACT sometimes take their sweet time to approve those accommodations. It's not like you send it in this week and next week they approve your accommodations. It could take us up to a month to get that back. Sometimes they're a little bit quicker, but not always. So as it relates to the SAT and ACT, one thing I'll say here is if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that your child is gonna start at the community college, they don't need to take the SAT and ACT unless you just want them to have the practice. But if we've got kids with anxiety, I say don't even put them through it because they don't have to have it, the SAT and ACT. There is something in the state of Texas called the TSI, the Texas Success Initiative. You can Google this. This is the entrance exam for all Texas colleges and universities, and they're going to test reading, writing, and math. And so that test is going to identify whether your student can take 4 credit classes or if they're going to have to take non-credit courses to get up to speed to the college level. So each of the college, like for instance, Houston Community College, they have free practice TSI exams that you can do. Most of the community colleges have those free practice TSI exams. There are also paid for services online that you can hire, that you can purchase that are a little bit better TSI practice. So you might want to consider some of those if you're considering going in through the community college. So as it relates to work, reasonable accommodations are required if it does not pose an undue hardship. You can look at the Department of Labor. One of the things, and I haven't put this on this slide, but there is something called registered apprenticeships, and they're on the Department of Labor website, and you can look it up by your zip code on like what is available. But there are all kinds of registered apprenticeships out there for individuals with disabilities. So if your child is maybe not going to go to college right away, and you want to look at some of these registered apprenticeships, they're pretty solid. And we did have a webinar just this last week about this, so you can check that out on our YouTube channel. And then there's just another website about a job accommodation network. One thing that I didn't, again, put on here, but I wanted to say, at the college level, guess what? They want to deal with your kid. Once your child turns 18, you are super fine to pay the tuition at the college and the university. But when it comes to calling, talking to them, learning about their grades or anything like that, unless you have a FERPA, somebody put that in the chat box for me, FERPA, FERPA on file. It's a form that is basically giving you authorization to call on your child's behalf and for the university or college to chat with you. If you do not have this on file, they simply will not talk to you unless it comes to how much you owe and to take a payment from you. So some parents find that out the hard way and they don't necessarily like it. This is probably a good point to chat about, that it is good whether you have a child with a disability or not. It is good advice to have a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney for your kids that are going off to college. If you don't have this and they turn 18 and something happens, there's an accident on the way home or something along those lines, nobody has to talk to you. So the power of attorney and the healthcare power of attorney is a real good document to have on file for all of your adult kids that might be away at college. Okay, so educational options post-high school, and we are going to put out an email today with this presentation. We're also going to put out a list of college programs that we're aware of that kind of talks a little bit more about each of the programs. We'll put that out in a PDF so you can check that out as well. But these are some of the programs that we are aware of that are out there. There's many programs that are out there. We don't work for them. They don't work for us. These are just some programs that we know that are out there. But here again, research these early. Who, what, where, when, why, how much. Is it on campus? Is it online? How many students do they take? Is it a certificate program? Is it a license program? Is it a get-to-work program? Is it a degree program? Those are all some of the things that you should be considering with some of these programs. But what I will tell you is that some of these programs don't take that many students. So again, the early bird gets the worm. If you're really interested in these programs, you want to get your application in. You want to pay attention to the deadlines. And again, to your inconvenience, all of these programs and their applications, when it opens and when it closes, is all different for our inconvenience. You almost need a spreadsheet to keep up with this as you're kind of thinking through some of these options. But we will indeed send the PDF with some other programs that we know are available as well. And then also, the last Tuesday of this month, I guess maybe this is, I don't even know. Maybe it's next week, I'm not sure. But we have a speaker with, who is a special needs college consultant. And she is going to be the speaker for our ADHD support group. And this is online. It is a Zoom meeting on that Tuesday night, and it's from 6:30 to 7:30. So if you've been thinking about, listen, I just want to hire somebody else to do this, help me figure out, they really work with you and your student to really find the good fit. They really seek to understand what are the deficiencies, what are their strengths. And she has really toured programs all across the United States, and she's really awesome. So if you say, hey, I don't have time to figure this all out, I need somebody else to help me, she might be your girl. So you guys are certainly welcome to join that webinar as well. Bloom Consulting. This is something, if you're taking notes, write it down and check out their website. Bloom Consulting, they have a number of different programs, but if you're kind of wondering, where is your child at? Are they going to be ready for the university? Are they going to be ready for the workforce? What are their deficits? What do we need to do to close the gap to get them closer to center? Bloom Consulting is your group. But what I'm talking about on this page, they have a campus connection program, and it just really empowers students to problem solve, and they kind of have, you know, a coaching program where they're working with kids that have various disabilities that are on the university level, and kind of helping them navigate their life, and their life as a college student, and what they need to do to be successful. And it kind of takes some of the responsibility off of your shoulders. This is a private pay. It is $1,000 per month, and they do have a really great program at Sam Houston State University. And I also have personal experience that the Office of Disability at Sam Houston State University is pretty wonderful as well. So this may be worth checking out, but they do have a lot of other programs. So when you're looking at their website, check those out. And what you should know is that Bloom Consulting works very, very closely with vocational rehab and the Texas Workforce Commission. So if your student is in VR, it is possible that you can get the Bloom Consulting services or the assessments from Bloom and have it completely paid for by the vocational rehab program. So just check all of that out. Okay, so as it relates to how do you get started with special needs planning? So, you know, the thing is what happens, everything changes when our child goes from age 17 to 18. Most of our lives, the kids haven't qualified for Medicaid or SSI, and it was based off of the family income, and the family made too much money. So even though your child's been, you know, disabled, they don't qualify for a lot of things, but things change drastically when they go from 17 to 18. So here's where we talk about, excuse me, getting started with a special needs planner. There's a lot of confusion out there on what a special needs planner does and what a special needs attorney does. So we get calls every week and say, I need guardianship, I need a special needs trust, I need legal documents. And that's what the special needs attorney does. And we work very closely with a handful of special needs attorneys that focus on just that, those legal documents that might be necessary for you as you complete your plan. But we're the money. So they're the paper and we're the money. It's really, really important as you're planning for special needs that you're taking into consideration the fact that money has to be in the right buckets, okay? So if money isn't in the right buckets, you could accidentally disqualify your child from benefits that they actually deserve. The other thing as it relates to special needs planning is that you're planning for the rest of your life, retirement, 25 to 35 years, but you might be planning for a child that's going to have care needs for the rest of their life. So it's almost like a third retirement. So careful planning early is important to make sure that you're reaching the goals for you and your family, and not just, you know, you and your spouse, but your loved one that may have additional care needs. So as we're doing this, the thing that kind of know about special needs planners and what the difference is that we're nuanced in all things special needs. So while we have the same licenses as a financial advisor or financial plan, we also have additional certifications like a National Social Security Advisor. We're a member of the Academy of Special Needs Planners, and we're just really, really nuanced in all things special needs. So that's the difference, because a lot of people don't understand where a financial advisor comes into play and a special needs planner. So basically, you know, a financial advisor, they understand all of the things on the finance side, but when it comes to special needs planning and money in the right buckets and how not to accidentally disqualify your child, they're not versed in those types of things. And so that's where the difference is on a special needs planner. And so I kind of use the analogy here is that if you had a heart problem, you would not go to a PCP, and you certainly wouldn't go to a podiatrist. When you have special needs considerations, your situation is special. It does take careful planning, and you should work with a specialist that is nuanced in that. Simple as that. When it comes to getting your documents together, you want to gather all the necessary planning documents. What does this look like? This is your Social Security statements, your investment statements, any accounts that you already have set up, life insurance, disability, benefits that you may have through your employer, any legal documents that you already have, wills, trust, etc., guardianship, supported decision-making agreements, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. The next thing you want to think about is developing a letter of intent. Again, we have a whole webinar on what is a letter of intent. and why do you need one, and how do you put this together. But a letter of intent is basically a family love letter. We eat, sleep, and breathe our kids. We know their needs backwards and forwards. And sometimes even under the same household, under the same roof, one spouse works and the other spouse is a caregiver. Sometimes even in your own household, your other family member doesn't know the day in and day out of every step of everything that you do. A letter of intent is going to be your wishes for your child if you became incapacitated or died. So this is for a future caregiver to pick up and to understand what your child's needs are, what are their limitations, their diagnosis, their meds, their allergies, religious preferences, what makes them tick, what makes them melt down. We do have a 20-page form fillable letter of intent template that we share that is a good track to run on. So the letter of intent can take a long time to do. We don't suggest you do it in one setting. It is kind of emotional as you're putting this all down and some of the stuff that you're going to have to look up. But if you're taking notes, put yourself kind of maybe a 90-day plan of to develop a letter of intent sometime over the next 90 days, and then let your loved one or future guardian know exactly where it is and how to get to it. Okay, so when you're working on formulating your plan, what we want you to think about is not just the vision of how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but how do you hope things will look for your future, for your retirement, what your needs are. We spend 25 to 35 years in the workplace, and we all had visions of retirement one day, and we're going to sail off into the sunset, and we're going to travel, whatever it is your dreams and wishes are for retirement. So if you have a child that's going to have care needs for the rest of their life, not just the rest of your life, when you're formulating your vision, that vision needs to have balance for you and your own wellness, your own sanity, your own respite and retirement, as well as the needs of your child. And oftentimes we see that families, they neglect themselves. Parents are always busy looking out for their kids and the best things for their kids. And sometimes in the meantime, we're neglecting ourselves. And there's no value to that, because when we're neglecting ourselves, we're neglecting our own respite, we're neglecting our health, that is going to limit your time and your ability to be a future caregiver for your loved ones. So we've got to have that balance there. It's super, super important. Okay. So some of the questions that we hear all the time is, who will care for my child when I'm gone? So developing a future care plan now will answer these questions. We want you to consider touring care facilities such as Brookwood, Marbridge Foundation, Daymark Living. There's facilities all across the state. And so what I'm not saying is how can you institutionalize your child? That is not what I'm saying. But having, looking at some of these facilities, so I've personally done this, okay? So I've personally gone and toured these facilities. And what I will tell you is it feels good. These facilities, whether they call, your child a resident, or they all have different names that they call, the members that live there, right? They're happy there. So this isn't how can I institutionalize my child, but what you'll see is they're important, they're needed, they have friends, they are working, they have community, and it feels great. When you go and tour these places, you're going to be amazed at how you feel and how awesome these places are and the happiness of the residents at some of these places. Some of these places have waiting lists. It could be 5 years or longer. Brookwood has a day program that you can look at. You don't have to reside there, but you want to make these tours and you want to get yourself on these lists. You can come up on the list. You don't have to say yes when you come up on the list, but if you're not on the list and you find out that you need a place for your loved one in the future, maybe illness has come to your family, maybe you're caregiving for an aging parent or something like that, your hands are full, your plate is full, you can't do it. So just get them on the list. And we want you to make careful considerations before naming a sibling as a future caregiver. So we agree that all of our families, we love each other And you know, I hear all the time, you know, my son or his brother is going to be his caregiver in the future, and this is not always a good plan. We like to see that that sibling as a future, you know, maybe they're part of the, you know, a successor trustee of the trust that's going to pay for care for your loved one. But we want them to have that loving relationship, the sibling relationship, the sibling bond, with no obligatory yeses of caregiving. Because especially, you know, when we have siblings that maybe have a 15 or a 20-year age difference, that might be a little bit different. But a lot of the siblings don't have that much of an age difference. And when we were this age, we all had hopes and dreams. Everybody's are different. Maybe they wanted to get married. Maybe they wanted to have a baby. Maybe they wanted to go to college and have a really awesome career. Maybe they wanted to build a house. There's so many things, hopes and dreams. When you're in your 20s and you're in college, or you're kind of thinking about your future, you're thinking about your independence. I don't think that anybody sits back and thinks about how they're going to be a future caregiver for a loved one. So just, we want them to find balance. We want your other kids to be happy and find the balance in their lives as well, and everybody have those loving relationships. Okay. So when it comes to funding of your child's care, of course, you know, there's the funding. We do what we've always done. We pay for it out of current expenses, current budgets, current income, things like that. But there are other things that when we cross over this bridge from 17 to 18, that there are other options that are available and funding that is available that you should be aware of. A lot of people are not even aware because they were denied before and they were so mad about it they never went back to the well to reapply. It's hard to understand that a lot of times people are denied for SSI and Medicaid, and SSI is a means-based program, okay? So when your child is under age 18, it's based off of your assets. What do you have? So bottom line is if you're married and you have more than $3,000 assets to your name, you can have one house and one car. If you have more than that, then your child doesn't qualify for SSI and Medicaid, even though they are disabled. Once they turn 18, even if they're still living with you and you still claim them on your taxes or what have you, what happens is when they turn 18, it's based off of their assets. So if you're single, that asset limit is $2,000, not $3,000 for married couples, and it's one house and one car. So when it comes to your child, as you're thinking, as you're transitioning, as we're getting to a point where your child is turning 18, what we want to do is we want to make sure that they do not have more than $2,000 in their name. Don't forget about those savings bonds that maybe grandma and grandpa bought 18 years ago, because those count too. It's all sources, no more than $2,000. So what if your child is 17 and a half, they have more than $2,000 in their name? What can you do about it? A couple of places that you can have money that SSI will not count against you is a special needs trust and an ABLE account. Okay, so we'll talk more about those, but anything above $2,000 can be moved to a special needs trust or an ABLE account. There's no such thing as hiding money from the Social Security Administration. So what you can do is you can spend down money for the benefit of said child, and you can show proof of receipts on what you bought. Anything, you know, as it relates to the needs of the child. It could be tutoring, it could be an iPad, it could be a computer, it could be a car. Doesn't matter. But if you can show that it was for that child, spending down as possible as well, but hiding is not. So the main thing here is you want to preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs. As it relates to Social Security, disability, and Medicare, this is a workers program. So you're earning quarters. Every time you work, you're earning quarters, right? You can earn 4 quarters a year for your work record. Our kids mostly don't have earnings quarters. Some of them work, some of them don't. So SSI is a means-based program, indigent, SSI, and Medicaid. Social Security disability is a worker-based program. And then after 2 years of eligibility, then they will get Medicare. But the key thing for you to know, and this is really, really important, we spend a lot of time talking about this, is that if your child, through the Social Security Administration, if your child's disability started prior to age 22, they have the basic eligibility to be considered for childhood disability benefits. It used to be called disabled adult child under a parent's record, or DAC is another thing. DAC, they used to call it. So when your child's disability has started prior to age 22, what this means is they can be covered under your Social Security record. And so when you become disabled or you retire, your child that is eligible for childhood disability benefits will be entitled up to 50% of your Social Security amount. So in that example, if your Social Security amount is $3,000 a month, your child would be eligible for $1,500 a month when you turn on either your retirement Social Security benefits or you become disabled through the Social Security Administration. So they're entitled to 50% of your benefit. Your benefit is not reduced. So that will continue as long as your child continues to be disabled, as long as you continue to live. Upon your death, it will be 75% of your benefit amount for as long as your child continues to be disabled. So that is an important feature to know. And so sometimes what happens is people are dual qualified for SSI and Medicaid and RSDI, Retirement Survivors Disability Benefit, and Medicare. And sometimes it's not that often, but sometimes we've actually seen kids that were qualified all three, meaning they had some work earnings under their own Social Security record. They qualified for SSI and Medicaid, and they qualified for RSDI under a parent's record. So that is possible as well. So again, we are National Social Security advisors. We have specialized software that can help do an analysis for families that have a special needs child. This is also especially important if we had a family member that doesn't have a work record of their own, like a spouse, for instance, that's going to be drawing off of the other spouse's record as well. So we have specialized calculations that will tell us exactly when and how to pull the trigger, what it looks like, and the dollars and cents of the cost of turning it on too early or turning it on too late, those types of things. So we can do those analysis for you. If you're, considering or contemplating retirement, in the next several years, I think it's important to kind of really look at these things, because the mistakes that you can make with your Social Security retirement are big, and most of them cannot be undone once you have made the mistakes. So these types of analysis are important. So how do we fund a special needs trust? So the truth is, you can be independently wealthy and just have millions of dollars, and you have plenty of millions of dollars for your 25 to 35 years in retirement, and you have millions of dollars to fund a special needs trust for your loved one. But the reality of the situation is that is not true for most people. It's true for some, but it is not true for most people. Most people are going to need the savings that they've saved up over the last 25 to 35 years to fund their own retirement, right, for another 25 to 35 years. So where and how do we fund a special needs trust? And oftentimes what we see is that life insurance is going to provide funding for a special needs trust. So life insurance on the life of the parents, upon the parent's death, the beneficiary is the special needs trust for your loved one. So that is one way that a lot of people do it. And then any additional assets post-retirement can also fund that. All right, so what do we need to know about ABLE accounts? So as I mentioned, you got a special needs trust and you got an ABLE account. Those are two places that you can have money that will not be counted against you for SSI and Medicaid. So what you need to know about an ABLE account, it's under the tax code 529A. So we've heard of 529Cs. C is for college, A is for ABLE. ABLE accounts came out in 2014, and the income earned in the account is not taxable. Contributions are not deductible, but it does not jeopardize SSI and Medicaid or other public benefits. And so in this example, the difference between the 529C and the 529A, the 529C, for instance, if you're a parent, you've got 529Cs, you are the owner, your child is the beneficiary. In the example of a 529A, your disabled child is the owner. and basically the beneficiary of that account. So it's a little bit different there. Some people ask me, I have a 529C college for my child. I'm not sure my child's going to college. We established this a long time ago. Can I convert this to a 529A? The answer is yes, but you can only convert $15,000 a year, which is the current limit of how much you can put into an ABLE account each year is $15,000. That number is higher if your child is also working. Okay. So next things that we need to be thinking about, and we've talked a little bit, when do I need a special needs trust and guardianship? So special needs trust is going to preserve benefit eligibility while providing resources for your special needs child. There is an unlimited amount of money that you can have in a special needs trust and still preserve benefits, okay? There's different types of special needs trust. There's a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust, also called a supplemental needs trust. The first party is the money that it belongs to your child. Maybe they earned it from a lawsuit or a settlement or a scholarship refund. That's their own money, first party. A third party is money that is not their own, okay? It's money maybe left to them through life insurance proceeds, given to them by somebody else. There is a Medicaid payback on a first party special needs trust. There is also a Medicaid payback upon death on an ABLE account. A third-party special needs trust does not have a Medicaid payback. So when we're considering leaving money for us, our special needs child, one thing that's important for you to understand is we never name that child outright on a beneficiary. I'm talking beneficiaries on life insurance, 401k, 403b, anything that you can name a beneficiary on. Do not ever name your special needs child outright, because what will happen is then automatically they're going to have more than $2,000 to their name and they're going to get dumped from SSI and Medicaid. It is a horrible idea, but there is a right way to do this. So if you've done this, it's no big deal. You can fix it. You can fix it for free. You need a change of beneficiary form from whatever institutions that, you know, like I said, life insurance, 401ks, 403bs, old pension plans, anything that you can have a beneficiary. You just need a change of beneficiary form. They'll provide it to you for free. You can get it updated and then send it back, and it won't cost you anything to do that. And I would say that 98% of the people that we come across have their beneficiaries set up incorrectly. And this is, again, something that, financial advisors that don't work with special needs, they don't really think about these concerns. They don't know about this. So it's really important that you get this fixed. So how do I leave money to my child that has special needs? And it would go like this. So let's say his name is Danny Smith, and it's going to say the supplemental needs trust for the benefit of Danny Smith, the third party special needs trust for the benefit of Danny Smith. So then it goes to the special needs trust, and it is distributed to Danny the way that you want it through the trust, but it didn't go to him outright and didn't cause him to lose his SSI and Medicaid. Super important. We've got lots of webinars on this, and we can go deeper and wider on this in the future. Guardianship. That is another one that we have a lot of webinars on, and these are all on our YouTube channel, so you can kind of scroll through and see what's out there, what might be appropriate for you, and kind of what you're, kind of where you're at in this planning process with your child. Guardianship, the process can be started 6 months prior to the child turning 18. We can, refer to appropriate attorneys that you can have this discussion with. In the state of Texas, there is something called the supported decision-making agreement. So the general rule of thumb is if your child has intellectual disabilities, they have an IQ of 70 or below, a discussion of guardianship is probably very well warranted with an attorney. If their IQ is 70 or below, it is of the mindset of most of the attorneys that we work with that IQ 70 or below, they may not have the capacity to understand what they're signing if you wanted to do a power of attorney or a supported decision-making agreement or healthcare power of attorney. So if an attorney does not believe that the individual with the disability has the capacity to sign as themselves and understand what they're signing, that's where you might need to be talking about guardianship, partial guardianship. There's different approaches. Some of our kids may need guardianship now, but they might not need it 10 years from now. So it is possible that you start that guardianship process, that you get guardianship in place, and it is possible that your child will get their rights back if they, have the ability to do what they need to do. So people do get their rights back. You want to have a qualified attorney prepare any of these documents. Again, you want to work with somebody that's nuanced and special needs. As far as the attorneys, they all go to school, they all learn a whole lot, but they're not all created equally. Many attorneys are not nuanced and special needs at all. We attend a UT special needs planning conference where these attorneys go, and they're updated every year on how the laws are changing, what is happening, what needs to be in your document, what not to do for your special needs trust to not be qualified as a special needs trust in the eyes of the Social Security Administration. So again, this is really, really important that you have the right professional work on these. Now, can you do a healthcare power of attorney and a power of attorney yourself? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. You can download these forms online and you can sign them and you can get them notarized and stuff like that. But when it comes to a special needs trust, when it comes to guardianship, this is not a DIY process. This is definitely working with a professional. It is super, super important. So we do have questions around that all the time. And we're happy to make referrals that might be appropriate for your situation as it relates to this. Okay, so some of the things, and we've talked to a lot of them, but things to remember while planning for special needs. We do have webinars on really all of these topics. At Consolidated Planning Group, we are here and we can help you develop a comprehensive special needs care plan. So if you have a child that might need care for the rest of their life, we can help with those future care cost estimates. That's questions that we get all the time. One of the phrases that I hear over and over every day, honestly, is I have a special needs child and we're hopeful and optimistic, but we want to plan for the worst, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And so we help families do just that. And by putting these future care cost estimates in place and kind of giving you a general idea of what you might be looking at and how that is going to affect retirement, we can, get down to the weeds of how and when exactly when you can retire. What does that look like? Will you run out of money? We're able to do all those types of analysis and help you with that. Texas waivers and interest list. That is a buzzword that we hear all the time. Are you on the list? Where are you on the list? Did you get kicked off the list? Are you coming up on the list? This is something that we hear over and over and over again. So if you're new to Texas, the Texas waivers interest list, this is something where you're going to sign up for this through your local intellectual disability authority. I mentioned earlier, Harris County is the Harris Center. It used to be called MHMRA. And then also Fort Bend County, that is going to be Texana. Each county has their own local intellectual authority. This is where you're going to get on the interest list. I don't know why Texas seems to be behind on this. There is no registry where you yourself can register your child and put them on this waiting list. There's no website where you can create a username and password and see where your child is at. I don't even understand why we do this. But so we've got the HCS, we have Texas Home Living, we have MDCP, there's the deaf blind with multiple disabilities, and then there is the Community First Choice waiver. All of those waivers that I just mentioned, and by the way, there's a whole topic on waivers on our YouTube channel as well. You can get yourself on the list through your local authority. CLASS is another waiver, but CLASS has a separate phone number that you can call and get yourself on the waiver for CLASS as well. Okay, so SSI, SSDI, understanding the differences and knowing when to apply. We kind of talked about that. ABLE accounts, we've talked about beneficiary designations and making sure that we do not name our special needs child as a specific beneficiary as opposed to naming their special needs trust as the beneficiary. We talked about special needs trust and how to fund them. Child support, this is a big one. I hope nobody here is in a divorce situation or going through that. But in the state of Texas, if you are divorced, a lot of families, a lot of times child support is going to continue post age 18 for a child that has disabilities. So guess what? The child support is going to be counted basically as two-thirds income, two-thirds of it as income to your child once they turn 18 in the eyes of the Social Security Administration. So how do we fix this? So basically, if you don't fix this, if you've got child support that's going to go, it's going to continue post age 18, it's considered income to your child, and they're basically not going to qualify for SSI and Medicaid. So how do you fix this? This is child's income. So we talked about first party special needs trust. So the child support would need to be redirected to a first party special needs trust. How you go about doing this is you work with your attorney, usually a divorce attorney, child support attorney. If you have both agreeable, we always love to see agreeable exes saying, hey, I just need to get this redirected to a special needs trust. Will you sign off on that? Then your attorney can draw it up. Everybody signs off. Then the attorney gets it signed off on by a judge. And there you have it. It can be redirected to a special needs trust. You have to set the special needs trust up with an attorney. Again, this is a first party. In the example that we have an unwilling ex-spouse to sign off on this, and of course, then you can go through an attorney and he can draw it up and put it before a judge, and the judge can put it down their throat. Hopefully that doesn't have to happen. But the bottom line is if it doesn't happen and it doesn't get redirected to a special needs trust, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm not going to take it. If it is court ordered for that child support to continue post age 18 and you don't get it redirected to a special needs trust, they are going to likely disqualify from SSI and Medicaid. We talked about starting to tour residential facilities at age 15. Get going, get them on the list. We've talked about guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision-making, and that you can start that guardianship process 6 months prior to the child turning 18. One thing that I want to mention here is that if let's say your child's 25, and let's say you never did guardianship, you still can. Let's say they're older and you didn't do the special needs trust or whatever, you still can. So even if you're quote unquote in your mind late to the party, you can still do it. You can kind of still pick up where you left off and move forward. What I like to tell families, this is a journey, and you got to get started somewhere. It's not about looking back about what you haven't done. It's about looking forward and taking the next right steps to move in the right direction of where you want to go for yourself, for your future, for your own retirement, where you want to go for your loved one and your special needs child. So I see in the chat box, we have got we've got Tri-County, the phone number for Tri-County, that is the local intellectual disability authority there. And then the phone number for class is in the chat box as well. So if you're thinking about about to get your kids on the waiver list or check their status on where they are on the waivers, you are going to want to check with your LIDA on that. One other thing I wanted to mention on those Texas waivers interest list is they're designed to keep your child out of residential. They're home and community-based services. They're designed to provide services. You might get care attendant, service hours. There might be therapy, a whole different host of different therapies that might be available to your child that could be paid for by the waiver. But one thing that you also need to know on the waivers is you want to check and make sure that you are still on the list, that they have your address, your phone number, your email address, all up to date. If you have moved counties, say for instance, you were living in Fort Bend County and you moved to Harris County, you need to call the Harris County Harris Center and ask to have your case moved to Harris County. Same thing with any county switches, you need to get updated. They're not going to remove you from the list. They're just going to switch your counties. You're still going to be on the list. But if they can't find you, you move, you've changed the address, you've changed your phone number, you've changed your email address, and they can't find you, you do run the risk of being kicked off the list, if you can believe that. So anyway, so those are the main things. And again, we have webinars on all of these topics. We hope you'll find our YouTube channel. We'll put an email out today with the recording of today. We will also attach the list of post high school options and kind of some of the different programs out there. It's a more extensive list than we had on the webinar, so we'll put that out there as well. And I would just love for you guys to meet my team. I'm often the speaker for Consolidated Planning Group. We have other speakers, but I work on an awesome collaborative team. And so I just kind of wanted to share a little bit more about Consolidated Planning Group, who we are. And so we hope you'll join us for future webinars going forward. Should you want to reach out and talk about your unique situation, certainly feel free to reach out and get on our calendar. We'd be happy to talk to you more personally about your situation. You can follow us on Facebook for more webinars. We do put webinars out every week, every month. And then, of course, our YouTube channel, which I mentioned several times, has all of our past recordings. So if there's a topic that we talked about today that you would like to go deeper and wider with, you can definitely find that out there on our YouTube channel. So having said that, I have got 10:59 and we're supposed to end right at 11 o'clock today. I would just like to open it up to any additional questions that anybody has. If there's anything else in the chat box that I missed.
Allison, I don't think we have more questions in the chat. Thank you very much for your presentation. As always, great information for our parents.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their week. Thanks so much, everyone. Talk soon.